Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with another Are You In? I'm super excited, so let's get going. Tonight, we are taking a look at Billie Eilish's debut album titled When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Now, Billie Eilish, Pirate Baird O'Connell, yes, that is her full name, is an American singer-songwriter from Los Angeles, California. I hadn't heard of this person until very recently through a lot of the mainstream media as well as a lot of podcasts, and particularly when Anthony Fantano reviewed her CD. If you've watched this channel for a while now, you realize that I'm not a huge pop person, but the way that he described it made me very interested, and I took a look, and I have been pleasantly surprised by this album. In terms of her voice, a lot of people are saying one of two things, which I completely disagree with. One, that she is very much along the lines of a Lana Del Rey or a Lorde. And two, that her voice is way too soft. Now, let's get to the first one. Lorde or Lana Del Rey, that to me feels like you're trying to paint too broad of a picture for this particular person. To me, I've listened to Lana Del Rey, I've listened to Lorde. Lana Del Rey, to me, she doesn't even sound that much like her because Lana Del Rey, to me, sings pretty lazily. I do like her music and I do like her storytelling, but I am also turned off a lot of times by the way that she sings, and therefore doesn't leave me as interested as some of these other people. I can see a little bit of a similar idea for Lorde, but I think Lorde's last album, there isn't as much diversity as people claimed. It was a fantastic album, but to me, it didn't deserve as much attention that it got. This one, however, is very interesting. Now, that's not to mean that this is groundbreaking of anything. There's a lot of songs that follow very simplistic patterns, songs like Zanny that's very jazzy, songs like 8 that is this really poppy ukulele kind of song. Wish You Were Gay is again another kind of jazzy type of song. Bad Guy, pretty standard alt pop song. Even Buried a Friend, When the Party's Over, I Love You, Listen Before I Go. All of these great songs do have influences, but what makes them interesting is the little tinges that her brother Phineas O'Connell, who has been in the producing and recording scene for a little bit, what he brings to the table for these songs. So let's go back to example for Zanny. Now Zanny is on the verses is very jazzy, very cabaret kind of song. But when you get into the chorus, this bass boost comes in and it also distorts her vocals, making for a very interesting contrast that keeps you interested in the song. Another thing that you're going to see on this song that you see in a lot of other songs is there's a lot of space throughout most of the song. So for example, on the first verse, you're getting just some brushed drums and a bass part other than the vocals, which leaves a lot of room, a lot of vulnerability for Billie and her lyrics. Also, when you get to the second verse, then you start getting some piano, which gives it a little bit more layering. But in the chorus, it's mostly just that bass boost. And then there's a long pause, and then you get the drums coming in. So interesting ideas that are spaced out in such a way that I haven't really heard in a lot of pop. To me, this becomes more eerie, more demented in some of these songs, and very dark at times. All Good Girls Go to Hell is one of the more standard arrangements, which it feels a little old school, kind of like a mix of like a 20s jazz, like a ragtime song, and like a more current song. But what makes it interesting is the distorted vocals on the pre-chorus and the intro. Wish You Were Gay is this beautiful guitar ballad, but it does have a little bit more current idea with the drums and the other percussion ideas that come into there. But then in the chorus, you have this nice EDM drop that's like very tasteful. And like with all these blast and boom ideas, these distortions, they never are too overpowering, which makes it more interesting when it comes in. When the Party's Over is mostly an a cappella song, at least in the first half of it, but there's also some tasteful tinges of electronics in the pauses between the phrases, as well as sometimes in the vocals. And then there's a bass boost in the chorus, and some more distorted vocals. Another one with so much space. 8 is this cheesy ukulele song. It's really fun, but it's also really weird sometimes with these childish vocals that switch in between the childish vocals and her actual vocals. And then there's some glitch pauses as well, again, giving some more interesting ideas. Buried a Friend is pretty simplistic melody-wise, but there's some cool ideas in the harmonies as well as the actual arrangement, which feels really eerie at times. And then it feels a little bit like Black Skinhead from Kanye's Yeezus album, but I like where this arrangement goes. Isle Mile, which was a puzzle game that dropped this decade, also feels a little bit demented with these like heartbeat drum ideas as well as these electronic tinge ideas that feel just a little bit off. But the really cool thing about it is the echoing in the chorus, where there's like this really resonant idea in her vocals. And then Listen Before I Go is one of the more powerful songs on this album, where it's very open, very vulnerable, but the gravitas of what she says shines through more when like the bass ideas come in, the boost ideas come in, the percussion comes in. What makes this interesting is none of these arrangements, for the most part, just stay stagnant. There's enough interesting ideas thrown in between in such subtle ways that make for an interesting listen over and over again. The first time I listened to the album, I was half listening to it and I thought it was alright, but then as I listened through it again, there's a lot of really memorable songs on here, and it's because of what both Billie and Phineas do with these songs. Billie is an awesome singer, and going back to the second criticism a lot of people are saying where she's a little bit too soft on these songs, and a lot of ASMR people are, she seems like she's the ASMR queen because of how she sings. Yeah, I can see that it's soft at times, but I don't have a problem with it. I think it's her style, and it makes, again, for this kind of eerie nature to a lot of these pop songs. It's a breath of fresh air in pop. Now, to be fair also, that makes the other songs that are kind of more pop-centric stand out like a sore thumb. So songs like My Strange Addiction, songs like Bad Guy, and also You Should See Me in a Crown, songs that don't really have as much to the arrangement. It stands out because it's not interesting. Those are some of the weaker songs on the album to me because it doesn't really do much with the arrangement. Though out of the three, I would say You Should See Me in a Crown is the more interesting one out of them. I could see those couple songs on a Lorde album, for example. And it's because of what this album is able to do to make so many interesting arrangements that those stand out like a sore thumb. Also, I could throw in All the Good Girls Go to Hell, but to me that is still an interesting idea for the most part. Lyrically, this album is also one that deals with some pretty dark and kind of funny topics. Songs like Bad Guy, talking about her being more of a bad person than the guy that she's dating. Danny talking about abusing recreational drugs and the consequences of that. You Should See Me in Crown is about wanting to rule over everybody and how she would treat people that she didn't like. All Good Girls Go to Hell, talking about the hypocrisy of religion and Alice's views on the subject. When the Party's Over is talking about breaking off a relationship with a lover and wanting to push the distance away. 8 is from the perspective of someone Billie hurt. My Strange Addiction, I think, is about her addiction to The Office, which I think is pretty funny. Also another funny one, in a weird way, is Wish You Were Gay, where she's hoping that a guy that she really likes that doesn't like her back only doesn't like her because he is gay, which actually turned out to be the truth. So you get a lot of fun and weird stuff on the front end, but the back end is where a lot of the more vulnerable songs come in. Songs like Bury a Friend, which is about Billie dealing with her demons at night and the physical manifestation that they create. Ilo Milo is about the fear of separation. Listen Before I Go, probably the most chilling song on the album, is about suicide and like a last message she's sending to her friends before she does go. I Love You is about falling in love with someone when you don't want to. And then Goodbye is a culmination of every song on the album, which is kind of cool because it takes one phrase from another song on the album and brings it back, which I think is a pretty nice touch. And even it brings back the harmonies from Zanny, which I think is cool. There's a lot of really interesting arrangement. There's also a lot of vulnerability that I like. And like, Listen Before I Go, I Love You. Maybe they wouldn't work, or even 8 wouldn't work if everything felt so one note. But because of the diversity, songs like 8 is a little bit more playful. Songs like Listen Before I Go and I Love You have this very vulnerable nature. Even though they are simplistic, it makes for some of the highlights on the album. Honestly, to me, there's only a handful of songs that are bad, and it's only because they stand out because of just how unoriginal comparatively to the pop industry that it just stands like a sore thumb. Also, I just want to say something really quick about the album cover. I think that also adds to just the world that she creates in this album, where if you look at it, it looks a little bit eerie as well. The idea of her sitting like that and asleep. The first time I looked at it, without looking closely, I thought it was literally like her being like a demon. And I know that seems a little bit weird, but the nature of how someone falls asleep like that is kind of jarring to us who are so used to seeing people in bed. Sleeping like that also is a little bit eerie. It's not horrible, it's not scary, but it's eerie. And I think that encapsulates the idea of what this CD is. It's not scary, it's not groundbreaking, but there's a lot of stuff that just feels a little bit off with the arrangements, and if you listen really carefully, you can hear when those come in, and I think that makes for a really interesting pop album, one that I will go back to. To think that it came from a 17-year-old, to me, I think is very interesting, and I would love to see where she goes from here. I came into this interested, and I came out someone who loves this. At the moment is one of the front runners for my favorite album of the year so far, just because of how interesting a lot of this stuff is. So if any of what I said sounds interesting, if you're looking for a pop album with a little bit more edge to it and a little bit more subtlety to it, take a look at this. This is a phenomenal album, and one that I'm glad that I took a look at. So that is my time. If you love or hate this album, let me know why. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel. That's the best way that you can see more videos like this. So on Sunday, I will be back with another Digging Through Discography. But until then, this is the Music Fan, and I'm signing off.